Welcome to the third rewind episode in this string of 50% Facts, where we're looking back to some previous episodes while I am away on vacation. This particular episode is from March of 2019, so about 4 years ago-ish, with Dr. Andy Galpin, talking about he was specifically talking about heat and cold shock proteins. The cold plunge has not gone away in the last 4 years.
No, it's probably gotten more popular.
It's probably gotten more popular.
So is Galpin.
Yeah, and so is Galpin.
Yeah, he just had a big series on the Huberman podcast. A friend of ours are in the industry for a long time. I think we first probably crossed paths with him because he dabbled in the CrossFit space with some nutrition and helping those athletes. And then he dabbled, obviously he's just a high level coach and educator on all things fitness, but works with MMA fighters and people similar in our circles. And he's a meathead himself. So he is very dedicated to the barbell in the gym. So we kind of crossed paths with him that direction. But I don't think the science has changed on this, so hopefully this is all still up to accurate, and Andy still backs it up because he is a good scientist and will maneuver his views as science unveils itself to us. Yeah,
he's not somebody who locks into a particular view and then expects that always to be the case. He's actually a good scientist who knows that everything is based on our current knowledge and not things we can't know or things that we can't be sure of yet.
Yeah, quick synopsis of this bitch. I talk about it all the time, and people try to argue me because TikTok people are idiots. But the cold plunge is something great for recoverability. But often when you're training in something like a strength sport or any sport, really, is what we're looking for is adaptability. And that may blunt some adaptations in hypertrophy and endurance, et cetera, et cetera. So cold plunge and heat shock's a little different, but cold plunge in particular has many applications, but it's just majority of folks are using it incorrectly.
Yeah, there are people who are using it very with a religious fervor that I don't understand. But that's true of almost every trend in fitness, is that somebody has adopted it as a religion. And
yeah, it's just a little like gatekeepy, elitist. It's kind of like the grind set folks that just like kind of a tough guy deal or like a elevated sense of self. I cold plunge, and therefore I am more spiritually whatever.
I did see an influencer yesterday talking about how she uses cold plunge to like make her nervous system more resilient, and I don't think that that's necessarily what it does, and that's not really it's not really why you're doing it.
I think the cold plunge, when I read people do content on it, it's very similar to CBD, circa like 2015, where like. And we had another great episode, if you guys want to scroll back. I don't think we're revamping this one, with Eric Helms on how to spot a gimmick.
I feel like we should put that one out every quarter.
Yeah, it's pretty good because it just stands the test of time, where like when one thing fixes 30 things, right? Everyone's like, cold plunge benefits, or like my mental health. Okay, I would never argue that, right? Because if it makes you feel good, it makes you feel good.
Whatever, yeah.
Then it's like immunity. Then it's like CNS resilience, endurance, recoverability for my muscles, the toughness against the list goes on for like 20 things. You're like, there's just no shot. Like, because then you're Superman. So you sit in ice and now you're Superman?
And some of the same people who are talking about cold plunge and are talking about hypothermic therapies, shit like that, are the same people who are telling you that you don't want to ice your shoulder after you pitch or ice your, whatever.
Because they are, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like we are built on the prostaglandins we create from work, from injury, from all that stuff. That's how our body recovers. The cold actually sort of inhibits recovery.
Yeah, you want that inflammatory process to take reins. But again, there is some benefit to it, and it's just about when you apply it. And hopefully you can learn a thing or two from Dr. Andy Galpin.
All right. Friday is a Topic Thunder, and then next week we're back with a fresh episode as far as everything. I mean, as long as everything goes well, and as long as I get back from like Europe and stuff. So, all right, we'll talk to you next time.
Drink a bunch of off podcast. Drank a bunch of Crown Royal the other day.
Oh yeah,
Way better than I remember. Maybe just because I've been drinking Jameson or something. It's not like I drink all the time, but like if we go out every other weekend, it'd be like a Jack and Coke or something, and then had a shot of Crown. I was like, fuck. I didn't think I knew the differences, but when I took that Crown, I was like, damn, that's pretty good.
I haven't had Crown. I haven't had a whole lot of Crown, period. But the Lexus Lounge at the arena, it's decorated with Crown.
Yeah, they do pretty good marketing. But they're like a higher end, right? They're kind of like the Patron. Like I know Patron's known as like a good tequila, but not if you're a tequila guy, it's not the best.
It's not the best, yeah.
Right, but Crown's like that. Like if you're not a whiskey guy, it's a safe, decent option.
It's a safe, decent option if you're not a whiskey guy, and they do some flavors and stuff like that. If you're into that kind of thing, if that makes it easier for you to get,
I mean, this could be on the podcast, I guess. Who gives a fuck? But I took my first shot. It sounds crazy, and don't judge my parents, you fucking dickheads out there. My grandpa, I guess, was known for Crown Royal. Like, I guess he drank it a lot, but I don't know. My family, it's hard because my dad never drank really. I had wine with him like twice, maybe. And my mom never really drank. I think she had some beers here and there, but not like when I was a kid. I think when they just became parents, like they were kind of an old school thought, and they're like, all right, we're not going to curse anymore, and we're not going to do these things, which probably didn't end up great because I'm fucked up. But so my dad never really drank. None of my aunts really drink, but a lot of their kids drink. They're all in, the Midwest. I think it's just a thing, right? You just drink a bunch of Budweiser all day, every day. But at my grandpa's funeral, I think I was maybe 10 or 12, and everyone's just fucking slamming Crown Royal everywhere. And so they gave me like 1 or 2 shots as a fucking 12-year-old, and I just remember like, oh my God, like, you're drinking poison. Like that's when it actually tastes like poison, It
does. It does taste like that when you're a kid. You don't have the taste buds for it. My wife's family did the same thing when her grandfather died, but it was wild turkey, which really is like
poison.
Kerosene. It's like it's like kerosene or something.
Yeah,
it's like really bad. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it happens. I don't know. And but having Crown the other day, I was like, man, this really ain't bad. And the other thing,
keep talking.
We talked about taste buds all the time because we had my mom on here for olive oil. You guys check that episode and different things. And I don't know if it's genetics or who has good taste buds or not, but I think I had okay taste buds considering my mom does it for a profession. But the older I get, like the more I think I love shit. Like I like coffee, and I've drank a lot of coffee since I was probably 22 or so. I started drinking a lot of coffee almost every day. But lately, I've had coffee like, fuck, this is good. Like I always liked it. And like, all right, this is pretty good. But same with like beers. I feel like, you drink some Bud Light in college, you're playing beer pong, and you're like, yeah, all right, it doesn't taste great, but I'm getting buzzed. And then you start like, all right, I'll have one IPA a week, and like, all right, that's pretty good. And then you start to have like some good beers, and you're just like, fuck, this tastes good.
Yeah, for sure. Smell this.
We're getting back into kerosene. What is this? All right, we got Glen Morangi.
Yeah, good merengue. Yes.
There we go. Highland single malt Scotch whiskey, the original, perfected by the 16 men of Tain. Who are they? 10 years old.
Yeah, I could give you a glass if you decide you want.
Why is it so light? Is that a thing?
A light color.
Oh, that doesn't smell bad.
Yeah, this is my point exactly. It's all, and it will be good if you taste it. I'll get you a glass if you want.
I mean, I'll try it. I don't know about a whole glass. We're doing a drunk podcast. What are we talking about today? We're talking about like infrared saunas and shit. We need to talk about whiskeys. That smells pretty good. I didn't think it would. I'm not a big hard alcohol guy. I'm not that big of a drinker, again, because my family really never really drank growing up. And then, I just hear horror stories of cousins, friends, or family friends being alcoholics. So I'd get a little, not scared of it, but
we'll pour just a little bit.
I definitely have an addictive personality, and so like I always am watchful with what I do. Like I got pretty addicted to lifting weights.
Mm-hmm.
I watched my line of taking performance-enhancing drugs or competing or dieting. I always watch my line. I'm as addictive as I am to things. I'm also just as self-aware, which has led me to not get into drugs or other things. But I don't drink a lot of hard alcohol. I'll drink a beer. I'll drink a wine. If I'm trying to like drink and chill, maybe a gin and tonic or some bullshit. But this does smell like sweet.
Yeah, and it kind of is.
Hopefully my guy Ryan, my boy Ryan, he's a little bit younger than me, 26, 27, but he's insanely into whiskey. I went to his apartment in in San Diego, and he has like an entire wall of like the most expensive whiskeys you've ever seen. Like, he collects them, he drinks them, he knows the name, he probably knows this. Like, he's just a big nerd. Oh yeah, I mean, it's good.
And it's not going to tear your face off.
Yeah, that's
the
the
issue.
issue.
Bit of sweetness. It's
yeah, I mean, it's still alcohol, but
still alcohol.
Like, if you never had whiskey and you had that, you'd probably be like, I don't know. But if you've had like I said, like a little bit of Jameson or Jack, which I don't mind. I like a little Jack and Coke here and there. But like, you have that and you're like, oh fuck.
I think Jack is a great mixer.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's a rough go.
Yeah.
You know,
what do you do?
neat.
Yeah. What do people do? Just throw this thing on ice and sip away? I like this glass too.
Yeah, you can. You can if you like ice. You can, you know, a little splash of water.
Yeah.
Sometimes it opens
a little
it up
soda
a little bit.
water deal.
Yeah, or just still water even.
Alluring complexity. I want to be a marketing guy for one of these things. They fucking crush
Me
it
too.
sometimes.
Me too. And the flavor changes a little bit while it
Little air.
yeah.
A single malt whiskey of exquisite finesse and alluring complexity. If anyone in the world ever explained me that way, my personality, oh my God, would I feel good about myself.
Me too.
Goddamn, alluring complexity.
Me too.
Which
Yeah.
I haven't eaten today too. I'm about to be hammered drunk for this podcast.
We poured just a tiny bit, but I walked into the grocery store in my neighborhood the other day. It was a Sunday, and they were doing a tequila tasting, and they're like basically handing me a shot when I walked in.
Sounds kind of fun.
Like, all right, okay, I'm off to. I was going to a 43-year-old man's laser tag birthday party. So
Yeah, tequila sounds perfect.
tequila, yes. Just actually, can I get that to go?
Yeah, my mom's not huge into drinking, like I said, but she's like we had her on the podcast, really big into olive oil and all these things, and she's now just dove in because she trained her palate a little bit, obviously for a specific thing, but she's dove into like chocolate tasting, coffee tasting. I think she might have done tequila or whiskey, even though I don't think she really likes either of those. But like, it's kind of like you find it. It's kind of like powerlifting. Like, all right, like I squatted 500. Like, let me go flip this tire now. Like, I built some strength. Like, let's go fucking mess around.
Right.
So I think
testing.
kind of. I think she's like, all right, I got this palate. I can find some flavors. Let's go see what these other experts are doing with this other cool shit.
Right.
Or, yeah, I'm gonna try a clean and jerk out of nowhere or something.
No, I can totally understand that. Completely off of this topic, but it's something that happened in. Now that we're both in the same gym, but not all at the same time. Again, I was in 24, probably 2 weeks ago with Chris, and we're walking through the cardio area, and I look over, and there was a guy on the stepper, and I could have sworn to God that he was eating a sandwich.
I don't doubt it.
I've seen some weird shit in there, including the annoying thing of people taking the elevator.
So me and Jim work out at a commercial gym that's dead middle of Sacramento, and although Sacramento in the scheme of things is pretty small, we were looking this up the other day. It was, what's LA, 4 million people, or the Bay Area I think is 3 million, something like that. Sacramento's like 500,000, and that's with our suburbs. But we are the capital of California, and so we do have a decent downtown now. It's growing a lot. A bunch of new projects are popping up left and right. Hotels. They just announced the soccer stadium got the green light. They just announced a whole new area. And we lived at a gym that's literally, 3 blocks from the Capitol. And so people they fly in and out all the time for Capitol work, obviously.
Yeah, half a block from the arena.
Yeah, right next to the Kings Arena, and so there's stuff going on everywhere. So you get a real mix of characters in there.
Yeah.
From probably some senator I've never heard of, politician, lawyer guy, to maybe a half homeless guy. Like there's stuff everywhere.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a strategy for homeless people is that you pay for a gym membership. So you got some place to take a shower and brush your teeth and all this stuff. And you will occasionally see people like, I don't understand the brushing the teeth in the gym. I don't get it. I don't understand shaving things in the gym unless you're a homeless person. I don't understand that, but I see it all the time.
Even the shower, like I do understand the shower, but it's just not for me. Like I guess if I'm commuting an hour, and I've never had to do that, right? Like, but I'm always the guy that sometimes I shower before a workout. I like to shower. It's just a routine I built in from life. I shower right before an event, so I showered right before a basketball game. Although it seems counterintuitive, it just wakes me up. Showered right before this podcast. Shower right before I stream. Right before a YouTube video, whatever, just wakes me up. But then after the gym, I'm just driving home. Right. I understand if you have to go to work after work. Like I get the thing, but I don't want that. I want to feel comfortable. I don't want to have to worry about funguses on my feet. I don't have to worry about, the shower curtain. I don't know. It just all feels kind of grimy to me.
Gym showers seem sketch. Gym, like hot tub jacuzzis.
Well,
Those
so
are super sketch.
that's what my story is leading into this next topic. We're talking about infrared saunas.
Yeah.
I think saunas in general, and then maybe ice baths. We're going to talk to Andy
Mm-hmm.
Galpin about all these things. He's kind of studied them and some of their benefits. But my first experiences were at a commercial gym, but gymming, I feel like in 1999 to 2005 was a lot less common.
Mm-hmm.
There's less just people
Mm-hmm.
into fitness. And then two, the gyms I went to were commercial in a way, but they were local commercial. There's only like 6 of them.
Right.
And so me and my friends, or we'd go to my friend's like club. He was part of like a tennis club, which sounds like super fancy for those that have never been one, but there's tons of different styles of them. You know, like it's not like
Right.
a fancy golf club. Like it's still
Yeah.
maybe a couple $100 a month, but it's not insane. So it's nice, but it's not next level. And we would just like work out or play basketball, and then we thought like a steam room or sauna was cool. You know,
Yeah.
like you just hop in there, you sweat a little bit, it feels kind of nice on your skin, you get to relax, and you just kind of dick around and talk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at this downtown one, I've been having an urge for a sauna. One, because I've seen some of the information coming out on it. Two, because I do find it very relaxing, and I think it feels good to sweat. Mentally, I feel good, but I have nowhere to go because they're just so grimy. And I don't, not only like the actual grimy, because who knows who's been there, and the wood and the moisture, it just feels a little weird with strangers. And then two, leaving, you're leaving all dripping wet. Like I need one at home. And I know there's some pop-up ones and things of that nature.
For home.
Yeah, but I don't know. Until they sponsor this podcast, I'm not getting one.
I think the Sturettes have one at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and for me, I think that like early on those dry saunas was like, well, like how long can you stand it?
Yeah.
You know, it turns into a little bit of a game. But now we got people who are taking ice baths in their converted chest freezer.
Yeah.
Or they're going to these cryo centers that
Cryo's popped up. That's another question I guess we could ask Andy about, because everything I've read on cryo is pretty false.
From my personal perspective, several years ago, probably 6-7 years ago, I was having a tendon problem in the back of my knee, and I was willing to do anything to try to solve it, and I ultimately got PRP, which helped.
Yeah.
But I bought a Groupon package from one of those cryo places, and basically, instead of doing a full body thing, I said, like, how many times could I come back for this spot on the back of my calf? And it was really cold, and it would feel better for an hour or so afterwards, but it wasn't sustainable at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Andy's talk, and what we'll probably dig into this podcast, is just like general health, recovery, things of that nature with infrared. But like, it's a whole nother conversation. We're going to have another guest on soon that might have some topics on this, because I know for a long time there was like pop doctors and hospitals and whatever would kind of have one path, and then like chiropractors, acupuncturists, PTs would have another path, but just hot and cold therapy in general, for more like a dedicated location like you're talking about for injury, long-term, short-term, how to kind of treat those things too might be a topic we dive into.
And the first time that I heard Andy, I guess when he was on Rogan, it was maybe the first time that I really heard him. He was talking about heat shock and cold shock proteins, and that's kind of the real question. It's like, is that something we should be concerned about, and what do they mean? And should we be stimulating them? And then I saw just the other day them talking about that if you have a routine around heat or cold or contrast showers or whatever, so that you're doing it all of the time, maybe your body stops producing these adaptations.
Yeah, because it adapts too soon. And I think, too, on top of that, what's the actual, not what the benefit is, but what percent is actually going to help us, right? Because we could talk to somebody who loves fucking creatine, and they're going to tell us all these benefits of creatine, but at the end of the day, like, depending on how you adapt and some genetics, like, it's giving you a 0.5% boost in your bench press. Like, it's really not doing that much over time. And so is this something that it's fun and it's exciting to find new information on things that might help, that show a real positive result in anything, because there are so many BS products and BS supplements and BS routines and all the, tummy tucks and diet teas, and there's so much bullshit out there. So when science can prove, and our experts really believe in some kind of modality, it is insanely exciting. But at the end of the day, if you can't, have a balanced diet, if you're not going to the gym consistently 5 times a week, if you're not consistently getting your sleep in, if you can't put this whiskey down, if you have all these other issues, do you really have to worry about this cold tub and infrared? And people always say, well, like, oh, well, maybe our best athletes have the same issue we do. Michael Jordan was supposedly a freaking alcoholic. How many people in the NBA do you think actually get the sleep they need and the nutrition they need? I don't think they do. So should even Dwayne Wade and LeBron James be worrying about this tub, or should we worry about these other things first? Because you can't really put a percentage on the benefit of good nutrition and sleep because it's everything. And so I love that Andy and these guys are excited, but I'm really interested in, what kind of the shock, heat protein may be involved, what it may actually do, because I've also heard this talking about, we had another muscle fiber episode talking about growing new muscle fibers or converting, I believe, actually, muscle 1 and 2.
One time to the other.
With PEDs is possible, and some of these therapies might do it, but what percent is it actually going to help me? Because we have so many other issues to cover.
Yeah, exactly. And is it a psychological thing?
Right.
As part of a larger plan? Do people need ritual around it to help them reinforce their good habits?
Which is great, right? If I go to the gym, I do I'm an MMA fighter, I do all my grappling, then I go do some cardio, I come back, I do some striking, and then I do some lifting weights, and then I'm hopping in a sauna, and I feel relaxed, and I know my day's over, and it's time for me to go to bed afterwards. Hey, power to you, right? Everyone needs a routine like that. My routine right now is, similar. Wake up, gym, cardio, emails, podcast if we have it, work if I have it, stream for 6 hours, and then I got to get my one episode of Netflix in. And when I know when I turn on Netflix, like, all right, it's almost bedtime, and then my routine's ready, and then I can fall asleep. If I didn't have that, I couldn't fall asleep, and if I didn't get my sleep, I'm fucked up. I'm sure we could run some kind of study that shows Netflix helps my recovery. Why? Because it's built into that routine, right? So I want to know what scientifically percentage is this needed, and then who should maybe even pay attention to this? What small percent or large percent of common athletes should be paying attention to something like this?
That's a good question. All right, I think we're going to jump in with Doctor. I know you like to sit in extremely cold water sometimes, and I know you like heat sometimes. And you were the first person I ever heard use the expression or the terms heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins. What are those, and does your body stop reacting if things like ice bath or dry sauna or whatever become part of your routine?
That's really good. Heat and cold shock proteins, it's actually funny you mention that. I'm 8 to 12 inches right now away from my ice bath.
Yeah.
Just happen to be standing here when you asked that question, so it's very interesting. But those two
we have
proteins
cameras on
are... I know it was you. NSA earlier. I taught you guys. Now the proteins are one of the few in molecular biology that are named apropos. In other words, the naming actually makes sense to the function. So it is a heat shock protein. This is a protein that responds to, ready for it?
Cold.
Heat. Ha! Ha!
Fuck. I need to go back to school.
God damn it. And cold is no different. So if you shock or stimulate the body with these temperature perturbations, these proteins become activated. After that, they have a whole host of downstream responses and activities. And this is actually goes back to our conversation regarding intermittent fasting, where we talked about autophagy a bit and the fact that it doesn't, molecules, proteins, genes, cells, they don't have a single function. And so people like to bastardize them by saying things like, oh, mTOR causes muscle growth, or testosterone causes muscle growth. No, one of the things testosterone does is cause muscle growth. It also does 1,000 other things. Heat shock and cold shock proteins are the same way. And so you could say, okay, turn on my heat shock protein, and that is associated with an increase in autophagy. Well, sure, but it's also associated with a whole host of other things. Just a couple of steps away from mTOR, for example. mTOR is one of the signaling proteins that causes muscle growth. A couple of steps away from that, it actually blocks muscle growth. And so the same exact thing is both increasing and decreasing muscle stimulus. It just turns out that in that case, the net is almost always muscle growth. Well, cold and heat shock proteins are a similar similar thing. We are far more ahead in our understanding of things like mTOR and muscle growth than we are things like heat shock proteins, cold shock proteins. The vast majority of the research is still in animals, rats, murines, or cell culture. We have some good evidence in humans, but we don't understand those things to the level we do things like, again, muscle growth and testosterone. So there's still good information in there, but that's a long-winded answer.
Does your body's reaction change if that becomes a regular thing? Do you stop provoking that reaction?
So I actually forgot to say this when we were also talking about intermittent fasting. But I am in disagreement with many of my contemporaries, friends, colleagues, and business partners on this topic. So intermittent fasting may kick off some autophagy or some other things, say increases fat burn. But this is simply mostly due to either an overall calorie restriction. So the amount of autophagy or anti-inflammatory processes to something like intermittent fasting, we don't yet know if that is because of intermittent fasting or is simply because you reduce calories. We know the vast majority of benefit from intermittent fasting is explained almost fully by fat loss. And so if you're able to put someone through an intervention who loses 20 pounds of fat, that is going to be so much more important for anti-inflammatory, autophagy, cancer prevention than the intermittent fasting was. So I'm not saying there's nothing at all special about intermittent fasting. There may very well be. It could be. But it's the uniqueness of the intermittent fasting is probably pales in comparison to the overall effect of caloric restriction or the overall effect of reduction of body fat. Well, the same thing applies to the thermal treatments. So if you are consistently getting extremely hot and extremely cold, you're no longer going to activate these shock proteins to the same extent that you did. If you look at all the literature on these thermal stresses, a huge percentage of them that are inhuman, which is also a small percentage of the overall literature, a huge percentage of those are very, very short durations, so typically 2 weeks or less. And they typically do interventions like, okay, you spent a total of 2 hours a day in the ice for 13 days, or something extreme like that, where you're like, okay, I get it to show mechanism, to show concept here, but this is not how people use them. And what happened after a couple of months when you got used to it? Well, it's no longer as big of a shock. Now, I have had this ice bath in the back of my house for a couple of years now. I can still tell you equivocally, every time I get in that 28-degree water, it's still fucking cold. All of a sudden, like, oh, it feels like a warm bath. That shit is cold as hell. But, yes, of course, it will be diminished. So I do not think we should be, in most situations, ice bathing every day. I don't think we need to heat every day. I'm also not nearly as big a proponent of sauna as other people are, especially for my fighters. I don't know if you guys have ever done jiu-jitsu, but if you put a gi on and do an hour and a half of jiu-jitsu, it's easy. They'll lose 5-7 pounds of water.
Yeah.
Easy. I don't think there's anything magical to the sauna. I think the magic comes in being hot for a long time and sweating a lot. I think there are some unique physiological benefits to simply sweating a lot. And so for those individuals, I'm like, no, we don't need a sauna most of the time. You sauna 3 times a day as it is, basically.
Yeah, you can just move around.
However, yeah, I have worked with many people, business executives and things like that, where I'm like, hey, you know what? I know you only exercise once a week. If we do pop in a sauna a couple other times a week, that might be really, really, really good for you, because I know you're not doing anything else. Or, hey, you can get in there. Let's do one of your meetings in the sauna. Okay, great. I'll do that. Well, that's a win. So I think it's a good thing. My grandpa, just had my grandpa get a sauna. I know he's not going to exercise. He's never, ever exercised. I don't know what to do. It'd be so hard to get him started. He doesn't live in the same state as me. I can't be there to help him. So I'm like, hey, just get a sauna. Get in there 3 or 4 times a week. And he loves it. So to me, I think that will actually have huge impact on his health. But there's something that's very, very different in giving something to an 85-year-old who doesn't exercise and thinking that's going to carry over to a 27-year-old powerlifter. Man, come on, we got to express a little bit of critical thinking skills here.
What I know you said there's probably not a lot of research or pure definition on the human for the hot and cold shock proteins, but if you were to do an extreme amount within 1 or 2 weeks, perhaps for extra recovery or whatever.
Oh yeah.
What I mean, there's probably not a percentage involved, but is it something more like supplements? Like, all right, this I might feel like the smallest boost ever, like creatine, or is this going to feel and make a real difference in my performance or recovery?
It could do both. I will use them for sure a lot. I got 3 fighters competing the next handful of weeks, and I'm trying to get them all in the ice bath 3 times a week. I would say 6 days a week, but they won't do it. So I'm fighting for 2 or 3. So no, I think that's just like intermittent fasting. I'm not against it at all. I'm for proper use. Very close to competition, I think, is a very, very good time to go ice bath every day if you can. Get in that sucker all the time, right? It's only going to help. How much will it help? Well, sort of depends on the person and the sport and stuff. But yeah, I think during those periods of time, it's probably a noticeable improvement.
Yeah, but it probably won't hurt if you're applying it correctly and kind of only doing it during the most intense part of training camp kind of deal.
Ooh, so that's where I disagree.
So you think it will hurt if you do it at training camp at the end?
No, okay. So now you just
maybe I misspoke. Go ahead.
Because let's remember, if we're blocking inflammation and we're blocking stress, well, those are the signals that cause adaptation. And so I would not do things like an ice bath. I would not take anti-inflammatories or antioxidants or eat extremely high antioxidant foods are fine, but supplementation during an intense part of training camp. Because the point of intense training is to induce adaptation. And if you then circumvent that recovery process, you block those signals to adapt. Now, when you rephrase the question, you said at the end of training camp. Well, then I agree with you. So if it's during your accumulation phase, your adaptation phase, then I don't think you want to go excessive recovery. I would say the same thing for Normatec, the same thing for Mark Pro or any of the other modalities. If the point of your training is to induce and accumulate stressors, then don't circumvent that by cutting out the stress. But at the end of your training camp, when you're very close to competition and you're not now accumulating stress, and now you're trying to peak, this is when you want to roll out all these recovery strategies.
That makes sense. I've known more than one powerlifter. I've known probably more than dozens of powerlifters who relied very much on anti-inflammatories in the course of a training cycle because they were just in pain. And I never really understood that because they are not getting that adaptive response, right? I mean, you're blocking it.
Well, yeah, I mean, now keep in mind, you always have to take it in context. So if they're in so much pain that you're like, well, okay, if I don't take these, I can't train today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you blocked 10% of the adaptation by taking Advil, well, 10%, 90% is still higher than 0% from not training.
Right.
So there's always a give and a take here, right? So you can't take that and go too far with it. So it's kind of a balance. It's like, well, can I get away with it today? Yeah, I think I can Skype that. Okay, go ahead. No, I can't. Okay, well then go ahead and light it up. And can we use another trick? Can we do something else? Can we extend our warm up? Can we do a massage? Can we do a different exercise variation that doesn't inflame the place so bad? If those aren't an option, then maybe you roll that bill and you get going.
To shift gears, another thing that's come up to us lately, we've been pitched the idea of doing something on hot yoga. What about we've been talking about like sitting in a sauna and not exercising while just sitting, and I understand that this is probably a case where context is important. If someone is actually active and then they're using, sitting in a dry sauna, and that's one strategy, or if they're using something like hot yoga, I'm assuming those things are going to be different.
Yes, but it depends on which marker you're talking about. So if you want to look at like heat shock protein, that's indiscriminate. It doesn't matter. Heat shock protein is going to be activated by temperature. So get to that temperature however you want. It won't matter. The other differences, though, would be something like, well, potentially it's better for the joints. Potentially you can also work on a little bit of shoulder stability versus just sitting there and not doing anything. So it would be the other benefits that would be the difference. But yeah, it's like I said, it depends on the marker you're looking at.
But for heat shock proteins, literally just temperature. It doesn't matter if it's dry sauna, whatever, steam room, like you mentioned, maybe jujitsu, whatever it might be. It's just kind of getting that temperature up.
Yeah, it's the internal temperature, not the external temperature. Just get hot. If you're getting super hot, probably doesn't matter a lot.
Hanging out in Sacramento in 110 degree weather this summer, yeah.
Yes, I mean, if you're down in Louisiana and it's September and you're wearing 40 pounds of football gear, like, you don't think that's activating your shock proteins? Come on now. No, that's what matters. The internal temperature change, how hot's your body getting? That's what kicks them on.
And cold. So let me ask you this question. If you're sitting in an ice bath, how long do you have to be there before it starts affecting your core temperature?
There's several trials have been done on this, and we have run some initial pilot experiments here with them. It depends on the temperature of the ice bath. If you're sitting in a 50 to 55 degree bath, like most athletic training facilities and places like that keep their ice bath, you're going to have to be there quite some time before you'll notice measurable changes in core temperature. Having said that, we have seen some pretty fast drops in body temperature in the sub 30 degree water. It's not uncommon for us to see something like almost a degree per minute.
Ooh.
So you start spending 5-6 degrees in there, it's not going to keep going at that rate, but certainly a degree every couple of minutes can happen. So you can get pretty damn cold internally pretty damn fast in sub 30 degree water. It's different than 55.
Mm-hmm.
You can be there for quite some time.
What about these cryo chambers?
Yeah, so they're not going to do much for internal temperature.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, so I'm not saying they're useless. They seem to be potentially equally effective for reducing muscle soreness, but the anti-inflammatory aspects, the other potential benefits, probably cold shock protein, and certainly internal temperature, they don't stack up with the cryos relative to cold water immersion. So I typically don't recommend them unless it's a convenience issue or personal preference, or if you're there for the sake of muscle soreness.
Anything?
Get the damn cold water.
Anything you think we missed in terms of sauna and hot water or cold water baths?
Loads, man, loads of it. But
we can only take so many bites at the apple at a time.
At some point, I got to get some work done today.
Absolutely. Well, we definitely appreciate you being on, man. How can people find you?
Yeah, sure. You can visit my social media, Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Andy Galpin, and you can check out my YouTube channel and my website, andygalpin.com, if you want to get your learn on and see what the kind of stuff I teach in my university classes about strength conditioning, program design, nutrition, XPhys, muscle physiology. I got a whole bunch of free videos up on the website and Patreon and kind of all over the place. So just search the Googles. I'm easy.
Here we go. All right. Thanks a lot, Andy.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
You got it, guys.
I am the Jim McD on all the social medias. Mike is Silent Mike with 2 Ks. You can find the show, 50% Facts, on Instagram and Twitter. Percent is spelled out like a word. We'll be back next week.